Hi, everyone, and welcome back to What Moves You with Jessie. Today, we have a really wonderful, delightful breath of fresh air new guest that I have never brought on the podcast before, and I am so excited to share her with you. She is a coach, an author, she might not call herself this, but after reading her book, I would call her a mindful health practitioner, to be honest. She is a wonderful and dear friend of mine, named Stacy Lindsay, who brought us together when she wrote about us in a Goop article a few years back, right before COVID. This wonderful human being has written a book all pulled from her own life experience around what it's like to be navigating life from a place of painful ambition. And she has written all about her experience, everything that she has learned, and is a fantastic coach and guide for those who find themselves doing the same, which I think is probably all of us. So I would love to introduce to What Moves You with Jessie, the podcast, the author of The Ambition Trap. I would love to do the whole title, How to Stop Chasing and Start Living, Amina AlTai. Amina, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, Jessie, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for that beautiful and warm intro.
Yes, absolutely. You make it really easy.
Oh, likewise. I feel like when you and I first met, instantly I was like, I'm sitting with a soul sister. I just feel like I love your heart so much already.
Ah, thank you so much, Amina. Same. Stacy's really good at bringing some good, like-minded souls together, isn't she?
She is the best at that.
So good. So, Amina, something that I really, really enjoyed and frankly really admired about the writing in your book is the scope and the learning curve that you include in it.
Mm.
I want to be specific about how you broke it down into two sections because it felt so complete as far as like I remember last night as I was reading the last bits, I was like, this feels like a workbook, but I almost hesitated to even make that note in my notes because I don't want people to think it's a workbook because it's not. It feels like a guide to life. But what I really appreciated is that there's wonderful calls to action where people can go and do a deep dive and get reflective on their own life experience in their relationship to ambition. So I wanted to say thank you so much for putting such a holistic experience into this book.
Thank you so much. And that was important to me. And I'm sure you feel this way too, as a coach and a guide. It's that, it's one thing to intellectually understand the concepts, but to embody them is a whole different story. And for me, the embodying has often come through the trial and error of the doing and finding our own way in the exercises. And so that felt like a must have for me when I was writing the book. It's like, I can't just talk about these concepts without giving people ways to live into them.
Yes. Well, because as you and I see with our clients all the time, and frankly, it wasn't until our own life experience too, right? It's all experiential learning. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So if you're just sitting there putting stuff into your brain, which we all do all the time, especially with looking at sound clips all the time that are good ideas, it's just more clutter. It's not like it's actually something that moves people, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, so well done. So you put the book in two parts, which I really love. Why your relationship to ambition isn't working, and then of course it has sections to support that. And then bring it around to embodying purposeful ambition, which I loved because at the first section of the book, because it was basically half and half as far as
Mhm.
the parts go. Um, it was amazing because it just got my mind going because the all the details that you get into around um of course we could all come from experiences of trauma and that starts to inform our relationship to ambition, but I love the details that you also get into around social experiences, cultural experiences. I wrote more things down here. Systemic discrimination, abuses of power. You go into it.
Mhm.
And so Anyway, that's actually not my first question. I just wanted to tell you that I appreciate it gave me so much education and a deeper understanding of where we get all of our conditioning from.
Thank you. Yeah, that felt really important too, because I think what saw with myself and my clients is that we make ourselves wrong, right, for having this particular experience. And there's reasons why we have this particular experience, from the cultures that we grow up in, to our family systems, to the system that we're operating in. So it felt important to acknowledge that.
Yes, yes, yes. I talk all the time on the podcast here with around the conditioning that we do have in our mind, right? Because from the education that I share with people, it's looking at thought in general and how it can get us, caught up and take us away from who we truly are deep down inside.
Mhm.
And it's wonderful to kind of get a better sense of the details of where that conditioning comes from. So I think it helps people stand up a little straighter.
It does. I love that. It helps people stand up a little straighter.
Yeah, yes. Okay. So I would love, if you wouldn't mind, I would love for you to share a little bit about you, the author behind the book. I would love to know your origin story around what made you realize that you had this really painful relationship to ambition. What was the pinnacle point that made you go, "Whoa, I need to take a look at this"?
Yes. So I share this in the introduction of the book. I just kind of go straight into it because I feel like it's so important that people understand where my relationship to it came from, and they can then see theirs in it and just like get, surgical like precision right in there. So in the book, I start by telling the story of just like my own family system. So I am the child of immigrants, and I very early on just was kind of like observing my dad and his own relationship to ambition. He's a brown man named Muhammad, and he finished his schooling overseas. And I just watched him sort of constantly trying to find his place in the world of work and always struggling. And I could see from a very young age stuff on his side of the street, and I could see where the system was also discriminating. And just having really interesting, experiences with him, like just observing racism firsthand with my dad. And then also experiencing firsthand where I could see, him getting in his own way. And both things were true. But it wasn't quite conscious while I was growing up. I was observing, but I wasn't really sure what that meant in my own life. And then fast forward to early on in my career, I was 6 years into my marketing career, and I burned out and I developed 2 autoimmune diseases, but it happened in this very dramatic fashion, which I think a lot of us need these shouts from the universe because we don't listen to the whispers. And that was very much my case, where I had been working really hard. I'd sort of carried that programming into work where you keep your head down, you're the first one in, you're the last one out. And I burned out and developed these 2 autoimmune diseases. But I get a call from my doctor one day, and she says, Amina, if you don't go to the hospital now, instead of going to work, you're days away from multiple organ failure. And so for me, it was like, I call it the stop moment, because it was such a loud shout from the universe that I had to stop in my tracks, really look at the way that I was living my life and choose another way. And from there, I went on my Eat, Pray, Love year, is what I call it. One, we kind of like transitioned out of that role and into another one. And I went to life coaching to kind of feel better in my own life. I studied mindfulness, somatics, like all these tools to feel better. And at the end of a 3-year period, the Eat, Pray, Love year turned into 3 years. I eventually went on to create my own coaching curriculum because I just recognized that I was not the only one that was struggling with this relationship to ambition. I wasn't the only one that was going to experience burnout, and we needed tools. And I started coaching 10 years ago where, I think we were talking so much about mindset. We weren't talking about the intersection of mindset, nervous system, well-being, career strategy, and tactics. And I wanted to bring all those pieces together. And then I've had a front row seat to the most ambitious people in the world through my coaching too. So all of the through lines I saw for myself were also mirrored back in my clients. And so that's the origin story. And then, it was just sort of amplified through this work of coaching.
Yes. When you were working but had not had the moment of, Amina, you've got to go to the hospital or else everything's going to collapse.
Yeah.
And I know you can't articulate it sometimes while you're in it, and it's better, we can articulate it in hindsight more than anything. Did you notice the whispers? Do you remember the whispers that were happening? Because I think a lot of people don't even recognize what the whispers look and feel like.
I reckon it's so funny thinking about it. Nobody's asked me this question exactly this way. Is I recognize the whispers because I was trying to do some things about the whispers, but I had no idea what the whispers actually meant, if that means anything. But I was having physical symptoms and I was trying to troubleshoot the individual physical symptoms. So, like, my hair was falling out, I had all these GI issues. And one by one, I was like trying to target the thing, but I was not at all connecting the through line that this was related to work, to burnout, to my relationship to ambition. I was like, well, this is unfortunate. My hair is falling out for no reason. Right. And so I would think I was really disconnected at the time. The really interesting piece of the story is that when the doctor called to tell me I had to go to the hospital, I didn't go to the hospital. I went to work. And it was through 8 hours of work that day that then I was like, maybe I should go to the hospital, right? I was so disconnected. It took like a full 8 hours for that message to even land in my body. And I think kind of that goes back to I recognize the symptoms, but I was not at all connecting the dots.
Wow. I cannot imagine how many people out there are relating to what you were talking about,
Yeah,
because even that is your relationship to painful ambition, as you put it, right? Because you were like, okay, I'll deal with it later.
exactly.
What?
Or, well, I was kind of gaslighting myself. I was like, and I'd also been gaslit by the medical system, which happens to a lot of women and people of color, right? This was the seventh doctor I'd visited. So I was like, is this real? Like, this seems a little dramatic. And then after letting it land a little bit, I was like, maybe it's not dramatic. Maybe I actually should go tend to myself, right? But as exactly what you said, it's like when I share this story on podcasts or stages, people will message me or line up afterwards and be like, I have a very similar story. And it's wild to me, but also is evidence as to why we need a book like this, right? Because so many of us are living in this painful relationship with ambition because it's what we've been taught and we need another way because clearly this is broken.
Yes, absolutely. Um, it made me think. I have this visual of playing whack-a-mole. It's like when you were dealing with your symptoms, you were just playing whack-a-mole.
100%.
Right. And then this other image, which is not related to whack-a-mole, but imagining like a really big tree, right? And you needed to look at the roots of the tree and pull up the roots. And it sounds like that's what that whole experience did for you.
It did. And over years, right? It was like, I feel like you kind of almost have to address the things at the surface before you can go the layer below and the layer below, or I had to because I wasn't aware of the roots. I was like, I have roots. Who knew? And so it takes us a minute to even connect with that idea.
Yes. Because we get so caught up, I would imagine that you see all the time with your clients too. We get so caught up to thinking that our experience inside is coming from outside of us,
Right.
when ultimately you had the realization, oh my God, it's what's going on inside that I keep ignoring and not even noticing.
Right. Exactly.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I have this quote that's blaring at me that I wrote down that I love so much from your book that you wrote. You said, true success won't come from doing more, but being more ourselves, creating more ease, and doing this work as a collective.
Yeah.
I think that is so, so powerful. What does it mean to you?
Yeah. I think sometimes it's really helpful to hear sort of evidence of that this can be true. The year that I made the most money, I worked the least. I had like condensed my schedule to 2 days a week and I was just kind of playing and it was coming off the heels of like another intense period of work. And I was in between like sort of in an interstitial space of like, oh, well, what's coming next for me? And I have this body of work, but I feel like another one is emerging. And I was just playing and experimenting and letting myself be bored, which I actually think is so important too. And I had so much ease that year. I had so much space that year. I had so much grounding that year. And I also had so much abundance that year. And I feel like it's so important to hear because so many of us feel like we're indoctrinated to believe, particularly in capitalism. And it's also, a tenet of a lot of religions, right? That like the harder you work, the closer you are to God, right? So like hard work and virtue go hand in hand. And then we burn ourselves out and we hurt ourselves. And so I was really interested if another way was possible. And I could see it in myself. I could see it in my clients when we invited in ease. Well, actually, when we invite in more of ourselves, we invite in more ease, right? If I let myself live into my zone of genius, I don't have to push, force, or effort in the zones outside of that. And same is true for my clients. And so honoring more of ourselves means that actually we could have a bit more ease and we could move at a different pace. And then that makes space for all of the things that we're meant to do and the abundance and all of those great things. And to go back to like, we're all in this together. there's a section in the book that's about zones of genius. And the thing that I love about zones of genius so much is that it sort of democratizes genius because each and every one of us has a zone and it's all of ours are distinct. And when we bring them together, we can have this amazing sort of catalytic ripple effect of change on the world, right? And because we each have our own zone of genius, there's no competition, there's no scarcity because each of ours is different. And we all need to be in it together to kind of create this system wide shift.
Yes, yes, I completely agree with you. Geez, I have notes, and then of course you're just getting my questions. Are there, but there's the ones that are just coming in the moment.
Yeah, let's go.
Exactly. What are you seeing in having conversations like this? I'm going off book because this is
Great.
just too good. What are you seeing in having more conversations around this? And I do also want to say I really appreciate that having the background that you do and being from an industry that gets so in that has its kind of, it's plugged into corporate life, things that kind of can come with all of that, like, yeah, I know you mentioned there were so many examples, but one that really stuck out to me because it was just so glaringly obvious and not that long ago was the Uber one, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Their
yes.
their tagline was, well, hustle harder, I think was we work, but what was the Uber thing?
It was do more and work harder. There's three
With
tenets that they're
less. Yeah.
basically about. Yeah, exactly. Do more with less, work harder,
Yeah.
not one of the, like, do all three of those things. And it
Yeah.
was very much sort of like instrumentalizing our bodies and hustle culture.
Yes. So,
Yes.
with that being said, because you have been plugged into that world and have had eyes on that for so long, when you were in it, burning yourself out, not realizing it, and then stepping out of it, being able to be more objective and be able to coach people that are still in it.
Mhm.
Are you seeing any kind of evolution as far as an awareness around this, or is that a hit or miss, or what's your perspective on that?
At the corporate level?
Yes.
At the corporate level, I think there's a difference between intention and impact. And I think a lot of organizations intend to foster supportive work environments that are psychologically safe, that allow all people to thrive. But to do that is actually a really nuanced, intricate, and challenging thing. And whether or not they have the patience and the resources to deliver upon that is a really different thing. And so I see a lot of places that really intend to foster these lovely environments, but the impact is really different because people aren't always willing to make the necessary shifts and changes it takes to create that environment. So, but I also do think slowly, 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 we are moving in a different direction. I think that, we're seeing so many people understand that, burnout is an epidemic, right? 70, 80, 90% of people are reporting burnout, depending on which study you read. I read one that was literally 89% of people reported burnout in the last year. So organizations are seeing that. They're seeing how expensive it is for them. So they're like, okay, maybe we don't feel it in the heart center, but we feel it in the bottom line. So maybe we've got to do something about this. And I think that, people are really seeing that, like, end of the tech bro girl boss eras, and there was some challenges there that actually didn't support their businesses either. So I think whatever way they find their way into the conversation, they're starting to see that the old way of working wasn't necessarily effective and it didn't support all identities. And I think they're trying to choose different ways. Some people can do it in bigger ways than others.
Yes, yes, yes. What is your personal experience of? I really appreciate that something you pull out often and throughout the book um, is, being a person of color and having that experience and how different that is as far
Mhm.
as your relationship to ambition. Can you share a little bit more about what you have seen about that for yourself in your own familial culture, but then also in how it repeats itself? Because I know that that's a common thread in the people that you work with also. How does that
Yes.
look different?
Well, so I wasn't seeing anyone have a conversation around identity and ambition. And I was scratching my head around that because it's like, how could we actually separate the two, especially when so many of us experience an ambition penalty? So, women, we're told to take up space and speak truth to power. And when we do, we're told our stories aren't real. Or people of color are told to throw their hats in the ring in organizations. But when we share the truth of our experience, we're told it's inconvenient. Or people with disability and chronic illness, they want to take up more space at work, but oftentimes the necessary accommodations aren't made, and that either exacerbates or creates illness, injury, and disability. And so what I was noticing with my own life and with my clients is that we're told to be and not to be at the very same time. Do this thing, but we won't provide the necessary pathway or the resources. And so it was creating this double bind. And that was so true in my life. And it almost becomes like really tricky and hard to see because it's both of these things of like take up space, but hide. And it was very evident in my life. I experienced a lot of ambition penalties of just, oh, you have so much ambition and it's reading as aggressive. You're taking up too much space. Oh, try to take up less space. Oh, now you're taking up less space. Try to take up more space. And we're all just kind of doing this like this dance and this cha-cha, trying to find our way in the world. And then it takes a toll on us, right? Emotionally, physically, spiritually. And we make ourselves wrong. We make ourselves the problem. And of course, there's always something on our side of the street that we need to look at. And we're operating in a system that doesn't support and serve all identities. But sometimes we can then further internalize a lot of that, right? So for example, one of the examples I give in the book is that if I, as a woman of color, believe that women of color are not supported in leadership, my confirmation bias is only going to find evidence of that, right? And round and round and round I'll go. And so from a mindset perspective, I do think we need to expand our beliefs while also working on the system.
Yes, I appreciate that. Absolutely. It's interesting. It feels to me like the more people are going to wake up to this, the more they're actually going to see. And I feel like you probably can speak to this with your own clients. But there's the world where you can expand your capacity for patience with waiting for the system to catch up. And then there's a world where you need to take care of yourself and move on and find another way. Do you find
Yeah.
that what do you find in working with people as they wake up to this whole ambition trap and the things that they've been doing as a result of, functioning from the painful ambition as opposed to the purposeful ambition?
I think it's tricky and we're all kind of finding our own ways, right? I know for me, like there are times when I'm like, oh, I feel like I have to knock so loud and work so hard to be seen in this context. And sometimes that energy can burn us out. Like literally, I've turned my own fire on myself sometimes, right? Because you're like, oh, I want to do this thing and there's space not being made for me. And like you kind of burn yourself out in the process. But I had an experience recently where there's sort of a lot of like external accolades that you can get around books. And there was one particular accolade that I was interested in because I thought it made sense for the book. And so we submitted the book for it and they said, thank you, but no, thank you. And then 2 weeks later, I saw them talk about ambition in a way that was like so similar to the way that I was talking about it in the book. And I was like, this is really interesting. It's surprising to me that they would say that my work wouldn't make sense. And then they'd surface up something that's so similar. So I went back to them and I was like, I really appreciate everything that you said, thinking that we're not a fit for you, but this looks so similar to the conversation that we're having. Might you take a second look? They took a second look and they're like, welcome, here's the accolade, come sit with us. And so, and I was angry about it at first. So like I'm describing this in a nice way, but like inside I was like feeling rage of like this borderline feels like plagiarism and you're telling me I can't sit with you. And so I used my anger. I think anger can be like a great equalizer and in service of justice. And I used my anger in that way. Now, if they had said a second time, hey, you can't sit with us, I really would have worked to kind of release and surrender on that because I don't want to turn the fire against myself. So I think we have to be really strategic about where we're going to like get louder, knock on the door a second time, and where we're going to say, I'm going to look for my people and my community instead. And it's such a nuanced dance. And I think both things are really important.
Yes. And where would you say that guidance comes from when people kind of are waking up to the fact that they keep hitting their head up against the wall?
I think that guidance comes from our bodies. I think that guidance comes from our higher selves. And like, we have so many voices in our bodies, right? We have like younger selves, we have higher selves, we have fear-based selves, we have anxiety selves, all these different selves. And I think it's really important to know what voice and what version and how old is driving the bus, right? So if it's like this younger version of me that feels deeply painful and unseen, maybe I got to reconcile some of that energy. But if it feels like this righteous energy of like, I actually need to course correct something and I want you to throw my hat in the ring for this thing, then maybe we listen to that voice a little bit too. But I think we always have to know where the voice is coming from.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Just out of curiosity, how do you know, you, Amina, how do
Mhm.
you know when it feels sturdy and grounded versus caught up in things that could potentially be a little misguiding?
Yeah, the voice sounds very different to me. It's like now I'm like, and listen, do I get it right all the time? Absolutely not, right? Like there are days that I really get it wrong, and there are days that I'm really dysregulated and spinning. I'm very human, right? But I am able to kind of clock and track the different tones and intonations and come froms better than ever. And I think it'll just kind of hopefully keep fine tuning as I continue to progress and age and all the things.
Yes to all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Like I have like a, like a 6-year-old version of me that has tantrums, and I know her, right? I know what she needs and is looking for. And sometimes she tries to come in and drive the bus, and I'm like, love you, girl, but you're not allowed to drive. You're 6, right?
Absolutely. It's so human.
It is so human.
Oh my God. Okay, so something that I wrote down that I really appreciated, because it's exactly what I say to people too when they ask me what I do. You wrote that your purpose is to help people come home to themselves,
Mm.
and I went, oh, no wonder we see each other because I absolutely that's how I feel exactly the same. So what is that like for you? What does it look like to you when you help people come home to themselves?
The answer that came through in this moment was reminding people that everything is right with them, because I think we live in a world, particularly for women, people of color, the LGBTQIA plus community, those with disabilities, we're often told all the things that are wrong with us, right? Like you're too loud, you're too big, you're too small, you're too feminine, you're too, all the things, right? We're too. And we just live into these ideas of all the things that are wrong with us. And there was a moment in my own healing journey where I was working with a particular healer, and I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this modality because they just told me all the things that are right with me. And all these other modalities highlighted all the things that were quote unquote wrong with me. And I think because the world mirrors that back so loud, we need the spaces that hold up the mirror and are like, here's your magnificence, remember? And that's what that feels like working with clients, is just holding up the mirror and reminding them of their magnificence in a world that's so quick to remind them of their quote unquote faults.
Yes, absolutely. So
What does
give
it feel like for you?
oh. Um, Having spent over 30 years in a chronically anxious body, even this morning, I got a voice note from a client who has had a huge insight, and she was just in you can just hear the truth coming from her about her experience and what it feels like to be at home inside, and to
Mhm.
know that that's constant and consistent and doesn't ever go away. It's a place to return to. And Amina, I spent 5 minutes just sitting in sobbing tears, but in joy, because I literally just had to sit with it and be in such deep appreciation, because I know that feeling. Of course, I'm a human being. I absolutely have all the full spectrum of emotions, right?
Mhm.
But to not be afraid of them, because
Mm.
I know that it's part of the human experience, and to know that being home inside is where I return to. I used to think that I needed to get my life just so in order to feel unconditional peace. And so
Mm.
therefore I never felt it, because there's no way you can get all the
Right,
pieces just so.
right.
So anyway, so what it feels like for me is there's a sturdiness, a quiet sturdiness inside of me that I didn't feel for most of my life, because I was
Mhm.
so vigilant all the time of, you actually mentioned this right before we got on the call, of that vigilance of waiting for the other shoe to drop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Actually, this is a perfect share that. I would love for you
Yeah.
to share that, because I just dawned on me that you didn't say that while we were recording.
Yes. Yeah. So you had
So,
asked me like, how are you?
yeah,
So I'm, sort of in the middle of my book tour, and
yes.
the book has been out a month exactly.
Yeah.
And so you'd ask how I'm doing, and I was reluctant to say it's going great because, as someone who's navigated a lot of trauma, I'm often waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I think but if I minimize if, we minimize anything, we also minimize its polar opposite, right? And so then I really narrow the spectrum of emotion that I'm allowing myself to live into. And I want to live loud into the joy of this because I deserve it. And it's been a lot of work. And so I'm going to say here and now that it has been magnificent and wonderful. And I've got to connect with so many beautiful people and hear how the work is resonating with them. One of the pieces that really took my breath away was hearing I was in LA and I got to have a little event for my community. And a client was there who I'd never met in person. We worked together a couple of years ago because of, pandemic and Zoom and all the things. And so I'd never actually gotten to hug her or talk to her in person. And she's getting married in a couple of months. And one of the things that she told me is that she's sharing this work with her stepchildren. And that just stopped me in my tracks because one of my goals with coaching and with this book is to try to soften the learning curve for people so they don't get the call from their doctor that says they're days away from organ failure. And I know I can't save anybody from their lessons. I'm not trying to be codependent here, but if I can offer people a pathway to a different relationship to ambition, I would love to. And so just hearing that this work was making its way into these kids' lives was just the most beautiful thing for me. And I really want to celebrate that. And also what I want to celebrate, I'm getting long-winded now, is that when you read the introduction, you said, Amina's teaching us about purposeful ambition. And one of my goals with the book was for people to use the language of purposeful ambition and painful ambition the same way we use the words or the phrase zone of genius from Gay Hendricks, right? Like if I can have a big enough imprint that we really understand where our ambition is coming from and we can live into it more purposefully, oh my gosh, will I have done my job? And so just the way that you read that intro to me was like this full body yes of like, oh my God, I think it's resonating, it's working. And I think it's like the most special thing that I've ever experienced.
Wow. And I want to give you even more credit here. I didn't read the intro. That's what came through me. I was absolutely just in the moment of what occurred to me to make what makes most sense for right now. And so that is how much of an imprint it has made on me.
That's so special. That's
Yeah.
so special.
Yes, because Amina, truly, I'm glad you articulated that because that is absolutely what I walked away from your book with is real clarity on
Mm.
painful ambition versus purposeful ambition. Absolutely.
That's so cool because
Yeah.
it's someone was like, oh, I didn't know that there could be two types of ambition. I was like, well, I made that up, right? I made that up based on patterns and life experience and all the things, right? So it's coming from a place of integrity, but it's like, oh, that thing that came through me, oh, that's meaningful to you. That's so special to me.
Yes. And the reality is the more simple we make things, it is so helpful for people to kind of wake up to where they're coming from inside of them when they
Mhm.
are going after new things, new, stretching and growing in their own different ways, whether it be with their businesses or trying new things or changing course or pivoting in their careers. It's so wonderful for them to kind of have a moment of reflection with the simplicity of,
Mm.
is this coming from a place of painful ambition or purposeful ambition? That's so clear because you can very easily feel into that and recognize where does it feel contracting and where does it feel expansive.
Yeah. 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 So beautifully said.
Good job, sister.
Thank you. I'm so glad that it's landing and resonating with you, right? That's the whole point of doing it.
So, question for you. What was the actual book process, the book writing process for you as far as your own relationship to painful and purposeful ambition? Clearly, the intention behind it came from purposeful ambition, obviously.
Mhm.
But did you by any chance find that you would get caught up in habits of painful ambition at all at any point of the experience?
100%. So, my editor lovingly says we write the book that we need most. And I think that is absolutely true. And the thing about this framework, too, is that it's not an all or nothing proposition. It's not like we live into purposeful ambition. It's like we're healed. We never go back to the painful side, right? That's just not how it works. It's not how humans work. And I know I have this natural tendency and propensity to tip into the painful a little bit, right? Specifically for me, it's overworking and instrumentalizing my body, getting almost tipping into the bad place, right? And so throughout the process, I really had to watch that tendency. And it's so funny because I was sitting with another author last night, and her and I represent opposite ends of the spectrum, where she was like, oh my God, she's like, I was so lazy in the book writing process. Like, I could not have done less. And I was like, girl, I could not have done more. Like, you and I are real. I was like, I love and respect your process. Maybe you can invite me to the middle a little more. But for me, I really had to watch that tendency to overwork, to overdo. And especially in the marketing of the book, right? That's kind of, again, where it got a little tricky for me. And I had to keep watching, and I would get very close to the line, and then I would recognize it, and then I would choose a different way. But, in the marketing of the book, and, I love my publishing house. They were absolutely incredible. However, most of the onus is on the author. It's really not on the publishing house. And I was over revving to make up for some gaps in the process, to make up for some under revving in other places. And I was watching myself, and I was like, no, girl, like, we've done this before, right? When you over rev to make up for under revving in other areas, you hurt yourself, right? And also, if we over rev to make up for other people's under revving, we make them small because we don't give them the opportunity to rise to the occasion. And so I had to keep inviting myself into, you do your best, and your best includes being best to yourself. But I had to keep watching it because it is a tendency for me. It's like a soft spot.
Yes. So relatable. That's the thing with all of us, right? It's like the reality is like once you wake up to your habits, that's huge because now you see choice where you didn't see choice before.
Exactly.
Like that's
Choice.
yeah, that's major. Like the fact that you just kind of fell right into that habit obviously makes sense. You want this thing you're so proud of, and it's absolutely worthy of being every ounce of proud about it, right? And you want to help so many people with it. It makes so much sense to me how you could have had to fall into that without even kind of realizing, oh, and then the second you woke up to it, right? And I would guess, but you tell me, did you get a sense of it because all of a sudden you noticed that you were kind of feeling the intensity in your body where you were like, oh God, I've been working really hard. Like how did you wake up to the fact that you were in your habit?
Yes. So in the book, I talk about how painful ambition is driven by our core wounds. So Lise Bourbeau talks about how there's 5 core wounds, and they are rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. And we each have 1, 2, 3, or all 5 of those. And then we wear a corresponding mask. So one of my wounds is betrayal, when we feel like our caregivers didn't live up to expectations. So then we try to control everything in our lives. We're like, oh, if I control everything, I'll get to safety, right? It's kind of like our lifeboat. So that was my trait growing up, and I carried that into work. And as much as I have worked on that, right, in moments like this, right, in extreme stress responses or particular contexts, my mask of control pops in and is like, hey, we can try to control everything. And so I was watching that. I was watching her like a hawk, right, the control mask. And then there was this one day where I was in the shower, and my resting heart rate was at like 150 or something. And I was like, I know this feeling. This is the old pal anxiety that is upset that we can't control everything. And I need to have like a real talking to myself, because I'm not going to live here. I'm not going to live at the 150 beats a minute that make me feel like I'm doing everything wrong. And I need to control everything to be safe. It's not productive for me. It's not healthy for me.
Yes. And honestly, I actually love that you said, I don't know if it was off the cuff, but I love that you said my old pal anxiety, because the reality is that the more you see your felt experiences as a friend, because it's just alerting you to what you're up to inside. It's a wonderful
Exactly.
way to see it.
Exactly. Right. There's a section in the book where I talk about making friends with fear, right? Because when we make these emotions and experiences wrong, we alienate them, we make these parts of ourselves bad. There's also this over rotation in the other direction that doesn't serve us. And so we just have to welcome all the things, all the pieces and parts.
Yes, yes. And it's so wonderful to see it as a system that's actually in your best interest, as
Right.
opposed to why is Mother Nature trying to kill me? It's like, no, Mother Nature's trying to wake you up.
Exactly. She's telling you, hey, girl, something's out of balance, right? Like, I can help you. I can help you.
Slow down. Yeah, exactly.
There's a section in the book too where I talk about subconscious sabotage, and I talk about it as our nervous system sort of it's safety restoration. There's our if we're trying to kind of grow and stretch into things, sometimes it doesn't feel safe for our bodies, so will unconsciously sabotage, right? But instead of making that subconscious sabotage, villainizing it, and making it wrong, and being like, oh, there I go, dropping the ball again. It's like, no, your body doesn't feel safe. So what are the ways that you could help it feel safe so that you could get to that goal?
Yes, I totally understand. I literally just said to you right before we got on the call, you were so sweet to say, how have you been? And I said, I'm right in the middle of being stretched. I
Mhm.
can, I can feel it because, there's moments of insecure thinking that kind of overwhelm me, and I'm just fully aware it's because I'm stepping into the unknown with my business, and I am stretching it purposefully, and I am, as a result, feeling very stretched. So it's a wonderful thing. As I said, it's like, again, this is just such a fantastic guide with your book. I was feeling very seen.
I love that. And I love you for sharing this too. And I also think it's so important as guides that it's like, I love that you're sharing that you're in this moment of stretch that has the found things feeling a little wobbly, right? Because I think sometimes, like as guides or coaches, it's like, well, we've done a lot of growth and we're a little bit distant from that moment of stretch where the feels like a little piece coming down our leg, as one of my old coaches likes to say. And so I think it's so important to have those moments of the bit of pee coming down your leg where you're stretching yourself and you're on the growth edge because it just makes us more relatable. And it means that we're committed to growth in the ways that we're inviting our clients to be committed to growth. And so I think it's so beautiful and generous that you're sharing that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Amina. Same with you and everything that you learned in here. Um, this is kind of. Oh shoot, I've got to. Oh no, okay. I have time. I have two specific things that I wanted to touch that I haven't touched, and they're so different. Okay, where do I want to go first? I'm going to stick in theme and then I'm going to go backwards. I have never considered. I often talk to my clients about listening to their inner GPS, right?
Mhm.
Their own inner wisdom.
Mhm.
And there you are, writing about it. And I love the way that you wrote living directionally. I loved that.
Yes, I can't take credit for that. That's my friend Megan Hellerer's body of work but I love it so much because it's genius.
Oh,
Can I
yeah,
share a bit more about it?
please do. That's the point.
Okay, great. So Megan Hellerer, who's a coach and friend of mine, and she's brilliant. She talks about living directionally versus destinationally. So kind of like culturally speaking, it's almost like destinationally is like the more for more's sake as I talk about it, right? So it's like, oh, I want this lofty title and I want to go live here and we've decided all these things about our lives without taking a single step. But the minute you take a single step, it clarifies, it gives you more information, right? So then you know what's the next step that you want to take. So we don't live this 1,000 step away destination. We live step by step directionally. And it's like, if you take 1,000 steps over the course of a year and you keep adjusting by 1%, you're going to land in an entirely different place, an entirely different city. I think James Clear gives the example of like if a flight takes off in San Francisco but moves like 1 degree every couple of hours, instead of landing in New York, you'd land in Toronto. And so I feel like that's such a great example of living directionally versus destinationally. And it's also really great for the nervous system because being so future trippy or living in the past actually dysregulates us because our brain is always just updating the map of the moment. And so if we're not in the present moment making a decision based on our current reality, we don't have the contextual map for this moment and we're dysregulated.
Yes, 100%. Just out of curiosity, do you
Mhm.
feel like that was you in a past life?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes, like just the idea of like my marketing career. Like where'd that come from, right? It's like actually, where it came from? In 10th grade, we had to do this book on careers and I like got a book from Barnes and Nobles on different careers that you could have and I read about account executives and I was like that sounds cool. I'll take that destination, right? But like I didn't know anything about myself. And so we make all of these decisions without really knowing who we are, and they're made so unconsciously. And yeah, and I'm sure I still do that in other ways today.
Yes. I just love this because what it speaks to me, because can you remind me, living destinationally, right, is when you
Yes,
kind of made up your mind of where you want to go and you're not listening to your inner guidance. You're just
exactly.
going hard for the thing. Um, that is absolutely, um, it just feels like it's living in a way that is absent of what is true for somebody in this moment.
Yeah.
So you get out of ultimately, you know, at some point, you kind of wake up one day and you've gotten to the place that you were living destinationally for, right? You get to the destination, and so many people I work with, and I'm sure you feel the same with your body of clients, they wake up one day, they have all the things, and they feel completely empty,
Exactly. Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Megan calls it the good on paper life. And then you just feel emptier still because you didn't honor yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, it's so relatable. I can feel
So
everybody
relatable.
nodding their heads as they're listening in the car right now.
Yes. Well, David Eagleman, who's a neuroscientist and best-selling author, talks about in his book Incognito, I think, that most of the major decisions we make in our lives are made unconsciously, right? The cities we choose to live in, the partners we choose, and the work we choose to do are driven by mechanisms we're not aware of. Most of us are making these decisions unconsciously. We're choosing a destination that does not honor the truth of who we are or where we are right now.
Yes, almost being more concerned about optics than happiness.
100%. 100%.
Yeesh.
Yeah, I know. So related, unrelated, but I was working with a client of mine who's a CEO, and we were talking about sort of designing her schedule around her and who she is and how she wants to move through the world. And she was like, but like optically speaking, like if I'm not working 15-hour days, my team is going to think that I'm lazy. And I was like, girl, you're the CEO. It's your team, right? You set the tone for culture. Why do you think these people are looking at you? We do so much based on the optics of it. And it was like a light bulb moment for her where she was like, huh, I am the CEO. I do get to set the tone for this culture. But so many of us live based on the optics.
Yes. And that's powerful for her to wake up to, because as you were saying to her,
Mhm.
for her to actually pause and take care of herself and to create a schedule that makes sense, that's not going to impact her team in a way where they're like, oh, now we can all be lazy. No,
Exactly.
it's more like they have permission now to keep listening to themselves, take care of themselves. And guess what? That means that they show up as their best selves.
Exactly. It allows us to show up in our highest yield contribution, not the opposite.
Ooh, that was a humdinger. Highest yield contribution. Say it again and
Yeah.
say what it means to you.
Okay, so it allows us to show up in our highest yield contribution. So that means leveraging our zone of genius, but doing it in a way that honors our bodies, our minds, our hearts, not trying to work in a way that is disingenuous to us. And then because we're doing that, it's the way that we do it is just miraculous and shifts everything around us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Hmm.
I was very moved at the very flip-flopping beginning of the book when
Hmm.
you said that you got a message from your grandpa
Hmm.
who has passed,
Hmm.
and he said, teach from you.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that experience? And this is for context for people. This is when you were kind of getting curious about your own career, and because did you get a little bit caught up in kind of the ambition trap as you even started your coaching career?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, and then that was the wake up call is when you slowed down and you heard that message from your grandfather come through, right?
Yes. So it was early into my coaching career, and I'd done all these training programs. And like the good student that I was, I thought, well, you just teach from these training programs, right? And it wasn't working for me. I was basically teaching all these other people's teachings, but I think the way that maybe it was landing in my body and the way that I was passing it on, like probably felt disingenuous because it wasn't true to me. And, what I realized is that, like, I, as a brown person with chronic illness, as a woman, right, I don't signal power in the same way that somebody who's cis, het, white, male may, right, or able bodied. And so, it was this sort of big piece of awareness and awakening for me, but I didn't know at the time, right? So I was just, all I knew was things weren't working. And I was like, well, this is a bummer. I thought this was the thing that I was supposed to do. And so I do what I always do when I'm kind of, distraught and don't know the answers. I hit my meditation cushion and I feel like I sat there for weeks just crying and looking for an answer. And then finally, after a couple of weeks, my jiddu, who's my grandpa on my dad's side, means grandpa in Arabic, came to me and said, teach from you. And I remember the time being like, whoa, like, is this real? Like, am I just so desperate for an answer that like I'm fabricating this? And I remember sharing it with a coach of mine at the time. And she was just like, yeah, like this happens to me all the time, like really sort of, typicalizing that experience. And I think it almost didn't matter, right? Like, is it real or was I searching for an answer? I do think that it was real, but it encouraged me to bring more of myself to the world. It encouraged me to share more of the teachings that were true for me and helpful for me. And that's where the game really changed for me because I wasn't trying to show up in a way that I felt like I should show up and teach the things I thought I should teach in the way that I thought that I should teach. I gave myself permission to be myself. And I think that's what so many of my clients are looking for too, is they just want permission to be themselves. So then, of course, that, twist and turn in the teaching would resonate and land more. But it was a very painful time. But then as soon as I turned that corner and let that be true, so many things shifted.
Wow. I don't know about you, but I remember when that kind of, when I started coaching myself 8 years ago, all I knew was to come from my experience.
Oh,
And
incredible.
so, and it felt like it took a crap ton of courage.
Yeah.
Like I
That's
did
very
have
good.
to, it felt like I was 100% on the edge of a cliff taking that leap, right? It's like I shouldn't quote this because I actually haven't seen it myself and people out there will think I'm nuts. But apparently in one of the Indiana Jones films, there's a moment where he has to cross a giant cavern and as he takes a step, the bridge shows up.
Oh my God, I talk about that in the book.
Oh
You remember
my God!
that?
Why is that? Why it's on top of my mind?
Maybe, yes, but exactly. Okay, we're sharing a wavelength. Yes.
Oh my God, this is why it's because it takes me 3 weeks to read a book. So of course I
Yeah,
read
3 weeks is
it.
pretty fast.
Yeah. Was it? Oh,
Yes.
that's very nice of you.
You're
Me-
building a whole program. You're living a full life. 3 weeks is really fast.
Meanwhile, Sarah Jessica Parker reads like 2 books a day. So, if I'm going to compare myself to a voracious reader.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Maybe she's gonna run out of books.
you know. But anyway, so there you go. So it's in the book because it's like what taking that leap of knowing that something is so true for you and leaning in and feeling into that and taking those first steps. It is, as you said, right? You kind of at first got, okay, well, this is how I do it right. This is how I do it correct. You did all the trainings, all the things. I fully understand. I was such the good student thing also, right? Um, but I really appreciate that moment where it was like it, I think it was really real for you also that it was your grandfather that you heard from. And just because when I read it, it really moved me. So that usually means it's true.
Mm.
And for you to listen to that and honor it, of course, it is so meaningful in your life. But I know what it's like on the inside, where it's a little bit like,
Yeah.
okay, okay. It feels so different and foreign because, again, back to the ambition trap and everything you're talking about in here,
Mhm.
it's so much more compelling to listen to our conditioning, which ends up driving us into burnout, as opposed to honoring what's true for us, taking the leap in that direction and watching the bridge to appear as we walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so cool. Okay, Amina, where can people find you?
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for your genuineness and your heart. You just make the most beautiful space and create the most beautiful container for such a genuine conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being you.
Thank you. And ditto, because you are a wonderful dance partner. So great.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you everyone so much for listening. It means the world to me. And you can find me on Instagram at Amina AlTai, my website, aminaaltai.com. And you can get the book, The Ambition Trap, How to Stop Chasing and Start Living, everywhere you buy books, whether that's your favorite national chain or indie bookstore. They've got them all. We've also got Kindle and Audible versions. And I read the Audible version. So I think that's always really fun.
Oh, that's so great because it's so much more meaningful when it comes from the voice of the author, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. And that was a real spiritual experience where like I felt some beautiful things being channeled in that experience. So
Yeah, I bet. And I am so, firstly, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I am so grateful to you. I am so grateful to Stacey Lindsay for being a wonderful beacon in this world where we can all be pulled together. What I'm going to do after we hang up is I'm going to go on to Amazon, and I'm also going to go on to Goodreads, and I'm going to leave you a book review because truly this is a really powerful and helpful book. So thank you so much.
thank you so much for that generosity. That's very kind of you. Reviews mean a lot to authors. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, final question, Amina. This is what I ask every single person at the end of their interview. Amina AlTai, what moves you?
Mm. Conversations like this, genuine connection, real intimacy, right? If like for me, it felt like there was real intimacy here. And one of my friends defines intimacy as like when you're risking something in the truth. And that really deeply moves me because I think it takes so much courage. So thank you for your intimacy. Thank you for your vulnerability. And thank you for creating such moving conversation and space for us all to be moved.
Awesome. Thanks, Amina.
Thank you.
Can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Me too, to be continued.
Yes. Okay. Bye. Thank you for listening to What Moves You with Jessie. Let's stay connected. You can find more ideas and strategies on being human on my Instagram at What Moves You with Jessie. Sign up for my newsletter or learn more about working with me at whatmovesyouwithjessie.com. And please rate and review the show and let us know what you think and what resonated. I read every single review. They mean so much to me. You can also call in on our hotline with your thoughts on what resonated there too. It is always live at 818-646-JESS. That's 818-646-JESS. What Moves You with Jessie is produced by Mike McGraw and Tinker City Music. Now, let's take a deep breath and give ourselves permission to live in this moment for what truly moves you.